You ever find yourself going to the grocery store for maybe one or two things, and you're hoping to maybe just spend $20, but by the time you find yourself checking all your items out and going to the cashier, you get your bill before you pay, and it comes up to about $150. How is it that one quick run to the grocery store for a couple of snacks could end up turning to an opportunity to splurge and buy everything that glistens and glows? Well, it's not entirely your fault, but there are measures that you can take to help ensure that you spend a reasonable amount when you shop in general. Hey everyone, my name is Daniel. Welcome back. I'm so glad to have you here. Today I'm going to be talking about personal finances, and specifically I want to talk about purchasing principles. What is it that I consider when I'm going to buy something, right? And so I have 7 principles for you today that I follow when I decide to purchase something, or I'm just really itching to get that new thing, or there's something that I believe I need. These are 7 ways in which I test myself. The first thing is to wait. Knowing that you want to know that you're being advertised to and tempted when you're going about your day, when you're scrolling through social media, when you're looking on websites, when you go, if you go to a mall, you're kind of setting yourself up, but if you're just going about your day, you're going to be advertised to from many different sources and avenues, especially when you go into a grocery store. You're being advertised to for things that you're not there for. Think of the structure for a grocery store. Like if you notice, in every single grocery store that you enter into, right, you're gonna enter through the door, and opposite the door that you enter, the complete opposite of the direction that you are in the store, I guarantee that there will be the dairy and the dairy section, right? Milk and eggs, right? They know that most people those items expire the fastest, so they expect that people will need to go to the grocery store more to pick those items up, and so they put it all the way in the opposite corner of the grocery store, so that when you come in to get there, you have to weave your way through the produce section and through meats and breads and everything else until you finally get to that aisle. So just know that they are intentionally marketing to you, not just to you, but maybe others that you're with. Maybe if you do happen to have kids, you'll notice that when you're walking through some of those aisles, advertisers always pay to have certain brands at certain levels in your aisles and on the shelves. And cereal boxes, common brands, you'll notice that their cartoony characters have their eyes kind of pointing down to maybe the cereal on the surface, but really it's a psychological tactic to actually look as if they're looking at the eyes of a young child. And the idea is that there's some eye contact that is happening there to facilitate the feeling of trust, right? And this is just a way that they're actively advertising you. Like, there's research behind this, there's tons of data, there's psychology behind it. You're not just randomly entering to a space and thinking that, oh, this looks good or this doesn't look good. Like, it is set up to make you buy stuff. So waiting for it also means that you're planning. So this is the second point. You want to write it down. You want to write down what it is that you want to buy. If I'm going grocery shopping, I shop my best when I have a grocery list. Same thing, we usually only apply it to groceries, but then when it comes to everything else, we kind of just, hey, it would be nice to have a new phone, let me get a new phone. Or, hey, it would be nice to go to this place, let me just go. But rather than just being spontaneous, which sometimes is necessary, make a plan, write it down, write down the things that you want to get, whether on a short term or long term, add it to your running list. And it feels so good and so rewarding to not only wait, but then to test it and see if it's a good idea to buy whatever it is that item is by the time that you buy it. So I highly recommend doing that, because you'll know what you really want, and you'll know why you want it, which will then help you determine if you actually need it or not, and also if you can actually afford it. And by doing so, you are now practicing delayed gratification, which is a much needed skill, especially for this generation, where everything is made to be instant, and waiting isn't really a thing that we're accustomed to, unless if it's forced on us. But you should practice waiting. You want to take that control in your own life by having that delayed gratification. You don't need to force yourself to do it for everything, but just know it's a good way to protect yourself and actually free yourself for what you really need to be free for. The third point that I want to mention is budget. You want to budget. You want to determine if you can actually afford what it is that you want to buy. So I think Jay-Z has this quote, something about if you're unable to purchase an item twice, you can't really afford it. Jay-Z is saying simply is that, hey, if you make this purchase, it shouldn't remove everything that you have. You don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. If you're making a purchase, you should still be okay. You should have your savings in order. You should have an amount to spend for whatever may come your way that you would expect to spend in that month. Maybe you also need an emergency fund that's set in place that if you make this purchase and something goes wrong, well, then you're not just dipping into valuable savings that can be used for something important, but you're actually taking it from maybe your emergency funds that is meant to be used for an emergency. So you always want to make sure that you're budgeting. I know it can be especially hard when you're a young adult, or when you're just entering to that phase of going, let's say, to university, living on your own. But budgeting will help you the most. It may seem like restriction, but I tell you, it is freedom. So you always want to budget. I think Dave Ramsey is really similar in this, where you if you can afford to actually purchase in cash, then you could go for it. As long as it's within a budget, go for it. Like when I consider what I spend in a month, if something comes up and I want to buy it, even if it's spontaneous, it's okay because I've actually budgeted for spontaneous purchases in my budget. And so there's no guilt of, oh, I spent this much on this, I shouldn't have done that, I have to make up money here and there, and you're causing yourself so much anxiety. It's like, hey, if you just budget for it and you fit those spontaneous purchases within that budget, you're golden. You don't need to worry about anything. It's already accounted and planned for, right? Adults, we make plans and we follow through with it. That's all that it is. So make a plan for the unexpected. And this way you save yourself from seeing a red category in your budget, which is never a good feeling. So please be doing that. The fourth point is this: tell others about it. So if I'm comfortable about what I'm going to buy, if I'm able to actually tell someone about it, I realize that it's actually not that bad of an idea. If I'm comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of buying, this is the reason why I kind of want to buy it, and this is where I'm at financially. Do you think this is a good idea? Like if you're able to get counsel from other people, if you're able to, if you're not kind of ashamed in the purchase that you're gonna make, then it's probably a good purchase. And if you're gonna purchase something where you know that everyone in your life is gonna say, hey, like you really shouldn't have got that, you don't need that, or why are you even buying that? Not to hold yourself to other people's expectations or anything, far from it, but rather you should act critically, discern why it is that you want to get what it is that you want to get. Sometimes you're just looking for an escape, and then rather than just facing the thing they need to face, you think this new purchase will reinvent yourself or will give you that peace. And doesn't mean you can't have entertainment or anything of that sort, but sometimes some problems are just actually meant to be handled face up, and other things can just be bought or purchased at a certain time, and you can just enjoy it freely. But you want to make sure you're buying things for the right reason, especially considering that you've already waited for it, you've already written it down, you made a plan, and it's already within your budget. And so I have trusted people who I could just say, hey, like, you know my finances to some degree. You know a bit about my situation. I'm thinking of buying this. Is this a good idea? And it's not only are they telling you whether it's a good idea or not to buy it, but they can offer you alternatives. You might think that you have the best idea or the best thing to purchase for yourself in your mind. It's clear. I know it. I want that laptop. And then someone come along and say, hey, like, don't what are you doing? Don't get that. Get yourself a MacBook Pro or something of that sort. You know, other people are really good because they're also watching of things that they want to buy. They're watching for deals and sales and a whole lot of other good information that you could be missing out on. So don't be too hasty. Take your time to wait. Budget. Write it down. But definitely tell others for some of these purchases because it really does add up. Another thing that I want you to keep in mind when you go to purchase something is longevity, right? So think about this. How long will this thing that I'm buying last me? Like, will I be using this item or whatever it is in the next year? Or is it serving its purpose? Like, if it's food, well, then the food's going to be eaten within the month. So, yes, the longevity isn't going to be super long. But if you're considering buying a piece of technology, like, for me, I need to consider if it is actually worth it. Should I buy less of it or more of it? Should I buy a higher quality item or lower quality, right? Is it better to buy something cheaper that fits within my budget for the month and last maybe a couple months, or is it better to save up for a couple of months for an item that will last me for years? And this is where I really started to, this is one thing that I didn't really understand when I was in university, was that I would think I'm always getting a deal, like I'm buying things quickly, I'm buying things cheaply, so it doesn't really matter because it's $5 here, $10 here, $15 here, but then they break 10 months down the line, 3 months down the line, 5 months down the line, and then I'm finding myself buying similar things again, or then later needing to upgrade where I could have just saved and bought that upgraded item in the first place, and it would have lasted me for years. So for me, this was something I really did with Amazon purchases. I would buy things and then end up having to buy them again or buy a different item from a different supplier because my current one kind of wasn't too good, to be honest, for lack of better words. And then you're kind of fishing between. You don't want to do that. Make sure that you're buying things that will last if they're meant to last. If they're meant to be quick, that's okay. But if they're meant to last, make sure that they last. The extra money that you put in is definitely worth it in the long run. By the way, speaking of Amazon, if you check my description, you'll see a list, a running laundry list of items that I purchased for my own recording setup. And so if you are interested in doing your own setup or just purchasing some of these items, then feel free to check those, and it'll link you to the items that I purchased. These are budget items. These are items that anyone could pick up and use to start recording yourself. If you are interested in content creation. So go ahead and check those, but now back to the video. You also want to ignore deals. So not necessarily, it doesn't mean you close your eyes at any red flag deal or any Boxing Day deal, sale or Black Friday deal, whatever the case may be. What I'm saying is that, again, with the marketing, know that there's an actual intention of the way that they're selling it to you, and it's not just to bring themselves it's not just to give you a good deal, rather, but it's also to bring themselves profit, right? And so some companies, I remember, for my Canadian viewers, you probably know, but Black Friday is an amazing sale in the States. In Canada, it hasn't been the best in these last couple of years. It's really pretty clear that you can find companies that will kind of mark up prices a little bit and then chop off and say, hey, look, we dropped it 40%. This is amazing. Come buy it now, when you realize the price was already 20% higher from the original price it should be, or from another retailer in the first place. So I'm not really getting a super once in a lifetime or once a year deal. You're just getting a minor deal that really you can get probably for any holiday, or even if there was a clearance or something of that sort. So I'd highly recommend that you watch out, because that can be a really good manipulation tactic. Instead you wanna focus on things that you're already going to buy. So rather than, again, spontaneous buying, oh, this looks so nice, it's 50% off, I better get it. Think about what you really need. So if you wanted to get, let's say, recording equipment, then you have it on your list, you're already waiting for it, and when these deals come, you're not, again, kicking yourself, because you know that you've already budgeted to some degree, or you're planning to budget for recording equipment, and now the opportunity has just availed itself. So you can capitalize on it, because you know that it's something that you've hopefully budgeted for, and it's something that you know you're going to buy anyway. So getting a deal actually works, because if you're going to buy something for $100, now you're buying it for, let's say, $70 or $60 or $50. So you've actually saved yourself $50 that you would have spent. But if you find something that you weren't gonna buy, but now that you buy it, even though it's 50% off, you're still spending $50 that you wouldn't have spent, and otherwise that money would have been either put towards another item or saved. So ignore deals to an extent. Only think about deals of things that you actually know that you need or planned to buy. But if you just look at any hot deal and you just spend, that is exactly what these companies want you to do. So be careful. Another thing too, with all the things that you may purchase, you should also consider returning it. Yes, sometimes we don't want to look like that guy or that person by going to the customer service desk and filling out those reports and making that phone call and reporting, because it just makes you look, well, maybe not as good, and maybe it takes a lot of time and it's frustrating to do, but it's worth doing. I mentioned before with how I used to buy Amazon items left and right, and truthfully speaking, I wasn't buying things of good quality, and I would use them, and then they would break, or I would just actually not use them. But then I would wait, and they're just kind of lying there. But when I realized that I can actually return things, I actually I really considered, like, how hard is it to actually return? Maybe I'm just making it look worse than it really is. And it wasn't really that bad. It comes in a box. I just keep the box, put the item back in its packaging, put it back in the box, and I take it to posting, and the return fee is already covered by the company, at least in this case. And so there, like, it wasn't that big of a deal. In fact, I would just get the items ready, and whenever I'm making a trip out, I would quickly stop by that post office and just mail them all out together, no charge added, and it felt a bit more efficient because I was already out on my way. Sometimes I'm already going to that post office. So, hey, here's 3 items that I can return within the legible period, and then you get that money back. And you might think $15, $10, $20 here and there doesn't matter, but if you're keeping track of each and every purchase and return, then you realize that that amount of money could have been put towards maybe a higher quality item, savings, or something else that you would have wanted. So just because you made a bad purchase doesn't mean it needs to end there. And hopefully this would also teach you that if you are buying something, know what their return policy is. Just go ahead and ask. Some places like Walmart and Costco will probably take anything back within the time period. So really learn what that is, and use that, whether it's a 7 to 30 day period or whatever it may be, because it adds up. And if you're really savvy, you can make a temporary use of the item and still return it. So you can still use it for its purpose, or just test it and really make sure that it's something that you want to use, and you can return it. Though I wouldn't personally plan to buy things that I intend to return. I'd rather just buy it right the first time. But just know that returning is something that can be used, and the time is definitely worth it, because that money is your hard-earned money, and it adds up. So take charge of it. Well, those were 7 principles to help you as you make purchases. They're just things that I typically tend to do, and I hope that hopefully you may have learned something, or just get an extra bit of encouragement and push to do the things that you already know that you should be doing, because this way you avail yourself a bit more with your money to use your money for what you really want and need it to be used for, rather than being worried about all the purchases that you made that weren't the best purchases. So take charge of your finances, protect yourself a little bit, and it doesn't mean you always need to have this consciously in your mind or something every time you enter a store, every time you go out, but it does help to know. And as you continue to apply these things, it just becomes habit. You're not actively thinking, okay, number 1, number 2, number 3. No, you're just actively doing this. You're actively applying good principles for when you purchase, which is something you should do, because your money is very important and your time is very important. That's about it for this video. If you like the video, if you can, check the description, and there would be more information about some things that I have purchased that you can probably use for yourself. I always want to hear from you guys, so if there's anything that you have implemented in your life for personal principles, and please put them down in the comments. I would love to read them and discuss about them, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.